and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another stupendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday, April 1st, April Fool's Day.
And happy birthday to my sister, Becky.
Happy birthday, Becky, from all of us at Cowboy State Politics. I'm sure the lovely Christine will be giving you happy birthday wishes later, maybe, if she's watching the program. Maybe not, if she's not watching the program.
We'll give who?
Becky, I guess. Happy birthday wishes.
She doesn't watch us.
Why not?
She went to a teacher's college of education. She's a lefty.
Yeah, well, we can't all be perfect.
No. Especially when you already have one perfect one in the family, it's a little hard.
It's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. Well, welcome back to the program, my friends. Happy Wednesday. It's another cold one here in Sheridan. Freezing rain. Now, this is something I thought I left behind in Tennessee, but evidently it's decided to make an appearance here in the Cowboy State. Well, of course, it is April Fool's Day, the day that you don't know what's true and what's a load of horse crap. Of course. Ken, stop pushing that button.
It's really hard when you're the sound guy and there's all these little things you could do.
Yeah, like shut up, David.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, good. Well, anyway, it is April 1st, April Fool's Day, and you have no idea today what's true and what's a load of
Horse crap.
But we begin this morning with something that is absolutely not horse crap. From the Open Range Record, an article entitled, Retired Judge Denies Bid to Add Heartbeat Bill to Ongoing Abortion Case. So this is, of course, going back to 2021, 2022, every single abortion bill that the legislature passes gets challenged by the baby killing factory down in Casper. And in this case, they attempted to challenge the most latest restriction on abortion, the heartbeat bill. And the bill is pretty simple. Really what it does is it bans abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected, which makes perfect sense to all of us that are not Neanderthals and just absolutely baby-killing heathens. From the article, and I quote, a Natrona County judge on Tuesday denied an effort by abortion rights plaintiffs to add Wyoming's new Human Heartbeat Act to an already pending abortion lawsuit, ruling that the proposed new claims are too different from the issues already before the court and would slow the case down. Now, the case that they wanted to add the heartbeat bill to stems from the 2025 legislative session in which the legislature passed two different and I don't even think I would call them restrictions. One is that it was the ultrasound bill where an ultrasound has to be performed before a chemical abortion. And the other one would mandate that surgical baby killing factories, also known as abortion clinics, had to exist under the same regulations as other surgical centers. You had to have a physician with admitting privileges at a hospital no more than 10 miles from the clinic. That just makes sense. There's a lot of botched abortions in which, the mother dies. So just common sense, and I hate using that term because it's always applied to us, but just reforms that just make a lot of sense. Well, the Wellspring baby killing factory challenged that in court, and they wanted to add this newest restriction, the heartbeat bill, to that lawsuit. And retired Judge Thomas C. Campbell denied the plaintiff's motion for leave to file supplemental and amended claims in the case. The first major adoption prohibition was 2022's heartbeat bill, and then the legislature passed the Life is a Human Right Act. The following year was Senate File 109, which banned chemical abortions, and all of those were struck down by Judge Melissa Owens in Teton County. That's where we get the first introduction that abortion is health care into Wyoming law. But the thing is that phrase does not appear anywhere in Wyoming statute. Nowhere else except in a court ruling does it say that abortion is health care. So that was absolutely legislating from the bench. And in my view, just absolutely wrong. But yesterday, the judge said that newest challenge could not be rolled into the old suit. So it's a small win, but I got to tell you, it kind of feels like a victory that we finally something goes our way in the court, or goes correctly, I should say. But in any case, that's a good one, and that's on the Open Range Record. You should go check it out. Let's see here. What else do we have going on here? I've got a stack of stuff, but I think where I want to start is with a little baseball. It's Wednesday, and we got a long week ahead of us, or a long rest of the week. And I thought we'd talk about some of the umpires. Of course, in Major League Baseball, we've introduced robots. I'm not in favor of that. Now there could be a challenge to whether there was a called ball or strike. I just find it offensive to the entire game because the umpire's accuracy, their strike zone, it's always been part of the game. And now we've introduced something in there to where the pitcher or the catcher, I think that's the way it works. The pitcher or the catcher can challenge whether someone was a ball or a strike. However, during the Brewers-Rays game, there was a bizarre call. Here's what Fox News says. Major League Baseball umpire C.B. Bucknor drew scrutiny and laughter on Tuesday night when he made a bizarre call while manning the first baseline during the game between the Brewers and the Tampa Bay Rays. The oddity took place in the bottom of the sixth inning with Brewers batter Jake Bauers at the plate going up against Cole Sulser. Bauers hit a liner to the Rays' second baseman, Ben Williamson, who knocked the ball down. But his rushed throw to first base went wide to the right. It was a remarkably routine play by baseball standards, but Buckner ruled that Bauers didn't touch first base when he was tagged, and therefore he was out. Check this out, man. This is absolutely crazy. Put this on the screen if you would, please, Ken. Watch this. Okay, there's the throw. Here's the throw. Wide. You saw him go over the base.
He's safe. Heck of an effort by Williamson at second.
So the call from C.B. Buckner is that Jake Bauers missed first base and then was tagged out. Not that he made.
Look at it. They don't even believe it. Watch this again. He goes right over the bag.
Where is C.B. Buckner looking?
He's not even looking at it. Why would he even say that?
C.B. Buckner was not even looking at the play.
He's stepped right on top of first base. I'm not sure what C.B. Buckner's looking at.
I think that guy used to umpire in Kansas City.
I think he did. He took lessons from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. Maybe it's time to retire.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, anyway, the play got overturned, and everything was set right. So, and this is part of baseball too, bad calls. And that's why they instituted the first set of challenges to where, you had, and I can't remember how many a team has, but they've got a small amount of challenges where they can say, hey, the umpire got this wrong. I want to throw a flag. And there's been a couple of plays recently where, that was pivotal in the outcome.
My team has a lot of challenges.
Yes, they do. I don't know. How are they doing? We're only 5 games in.
They won one. They got swept right off the bat, and then they won one, but I don't follow it every day.
Well, it's a long season, and we're only about 5 games in. But my Texas Rangers are 4-1. Again, it's early, and I think that the curse of being a former Denver Broncos fan has followed me all the way to the Texas Rangers because, like the Broncos, when they play the Chiefs or the Raiders, the Broncos could be undefeated. They play the Chiefs or the Raiders, and they'll lose.
Except that history the last year or two doesn't bear that out. But
it's a long history, though, Ken.
You should have hung with them. We're having fun.
No, I will not. I will not willingly watch a Denver Broncos game. If it's on and I'm somewhere else, I'll watch it, but I am not a fan of the National Football League anymore. That whole kneeling for the national anthem did it in for me. All right, so let's move a little bit to the news. From the Turkey Vulture, the University of Wyoming unveils 2 finalists for president. And I quote, the University of Wyoming has narrowed its presidential search to 2 candidates. Kelly Crane is the dean of the College of Agriculture, Life Sciences, and Natural Resources at UW, and Brigadier General Shane Reeves is the dean of the Academic Board of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. The men were selected from a pool of 103 candidates vying to succeed President Ed Seidel, who will step down when his contract expires in June. Seidel has served as UW's top administrator since 2020, and his tenure at the university has been, I would say it's been marked by several different controversies, some of which were covered by the media, some of which were only covered by Cowboy state politics. But Ed Seidel, he's really had kind of a rough go at the university. Now, if you talk to Gabe Saint, at the University of Wyoming, the president of Turning Point USA, he gives Ed Seidel a lot of credit for moving UW more in the direction of free speech than it was before. But even Gabe will tell you that there's still some challenges at the university when it comes to being open to different viewpoints. Let's see here. Seidel's 2025 decision to step down came 3 months after the faculty senate overwhelmingly delivered a vote of no confidence in his leadership following the demotion of a popular dean, who, by the way, I didn't print this out, but that dean that was demoted, he's running against Ocean Andrew. I don't know much about the dean, except that he has been at the university for a long time, which generally speaking is not a very good sign. And I think in Laramie, it would be hard to find somebody more conservative than Ocean Andrew. Even though, Ocean, he probably votes conservatively, middle to high 70% of the time.
My adopted ex-stepbrother lives in Laramie, and he's considerably more conservative.
Yeah, well, it's like I say, you spend time at the university, and
he lives in Laramie, but he works in Cody. So
we tried to get out of the
he does a lot of
swamp.
driving.
All right, let's see here. So whoever fills this position will helm Wyoming's only 4-year university, which was buoyed in March by a defeat of a legislative proposal to cut $61 million in state funding. I don't know why the university doesn't fund itself. They have a gigantic endowment that is closing in on $1 billion. So why not fund their own school and be done with all the legislative?
Why not fund their own student athletes?
Yeah, that might be good too.
Yeah.
They have the Cowboy Joe Club.
$5 million's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. So let's hear who these people are. The Board of Trustees selected the finalists following 2 rounds of interviews, including one conducted by a 17-member search committee. Can you imagine being interviewed in front of a committee of 17 people?
Yes, I can. And Guess who was the head of that committee?
I have no idea.
Nina Weber.
Really?
Yeah, there were actually only about 9 of them, but yeah, it was.
So what were you being interviewed for?
I was going to take a position. She was the administrator of a nursing home. And
That's right. That was
yeah,
way back
I
there.
went and applied to be the maintenance supervisor there, and I did get the job, and that's how Nina and I got started as friends. But it was a little intimidating walking into this place full of women, and
It's like walking into any meeting at the Open Range Record.
Yeah, it's going to the Chamber of Communists or something.
Yeah, something like that. All right. So Crane, as I mentioned, he is a University of Wyoming alumnus, and he earned a doctorate in rangeland ecology and management. This might be the guy to get back to Wyoming UW's mission of being a land-grant university. His biography stressed that Crane's collaborative approach to building partnerships and encouraging innovation. Let's see here. The other guy, Brigadier General, though most of Reeves's career has taken place elsewhere, he's a native of Rock Springs. Well, there is the first black mark on his record. Just about everything that comes from Rock Springs, except for any conservative that got elected there, is bad. That is a liberal cesspool. All right. He graduated from the U.S. Military Academy in 1996 and was commissioned as an armor officer at Fort Irwin, California, where he served in several positions. He transitioned to law and holds a master's degree in military law from the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School and a Juris Doctorate from William and Mary, along with a bachelor's degree in science from the U.S. Military Academy. And according to his Academy biography, he's worked in multiple positions from Fort Riley, Kansas to Iraq.
You ever been to Fort Irwin?
I have not.
I have.
And?
It sits right at the southern end of Death Valley.
Oh, great. Great place.
And that is the location of the National Training Center, formerly called NTC. And it absolute hell to be down there, especially in the summertime.
Well, there's a reason it's called Death Valley.
Yeah. But I will tell you what, that place prepares you. When we went over to the desert, at least from my perspective in maintenance, I'd already been through the challenges.
Yeah.
And it was excellent training. They have what they call the op forces there. They come out and we do war games with play giant laser tag, really. I got a lot of stories from that.
Yeah. Well, here's another black mark on this guy's record, and it's probably one of the reasons he was selected to be one of the finalists. President Sleepy Joe Biden nominated Reeves to be the dean of the academic board at the U.S. Military Academy, and the U.S. Senate confirmed him in 2021. According to the Rock Springs Rocket Miner, Reeves and his wife have resided in West Point for more than 10 years and raised 3 children there. So anybody who got nominated by Joe Biden, I think, is automatically suspect.
That is a challenge. You know, I'm as proud of the military as anybody should be. But there were some changes in the Carter years.
Lots.
Certain officers were drummed out, and you had to learn to go along to get along if you wanted a career. And it has changed the entire flavor of the military. So.
Well, and I think if you talk to anybody, even Brent Bien when he was in here, though he didn't say it on the air, I mean, you could tell that his decision to get out of the military was dictated in large part by who was the guy at the top.
The politics gets intense.
Yeah. Well, speaking of politics, I've got a story that you may not even be aware of, Ken.
Gee, I hope not.
Well, I mean, this one is, I don't know, it's interesting. I found it last night. But the title of this piece is The Freedom Caucus Unveils Plan to Create Unity Inside a Fractured Party. And this comes from both the National Freedom Caucus and the State Freedom Caucus. Well, let me just read you the opening paragraphs here. In a bold and deeply clarifying move to address what experts are calling the most Wyoming problem imaginable, the House Freedom Caucus announced this week that it will now accept all Republicans into its ranks. No questions asked, no ideological tests required, and most importantly, no paperwork that might accidentally reveal who someone actually is. The decision comes after years of growing confusion among Wyoming voters, many of whom recently discovered that a surprising number of their Republican neighbors are, in fact, Democrats or independents, or possibly just people who wanted to vote in the primary and found that their registration form could be emotionally flexible. It's not deception, explained one longtime voter while carefully not making eye contact. It's strategic enthusiasm for procedural access. Political scientists have struggled to categorize this phenomenon with early theories including reverse partisan osmosis, ballot-based identity fluidity, and the more widely accepted, well, it's Wyoming. The issue came to a head when several candidates began noticing that their most enthusiastic Republican supporters were also attending Democratic fundraisers, volunteering for opposing campaigns, and occasionally arguing with themselves in public comment sections. Now, of course, this is referring to all of the debates on Facebook that you see surrounding anything to do with the Freedom Caucus. Now, faced with this existential blur, the House Freedom Caucus opted for a solution rooted in simplicity. Just eliminate the distinction entirely. Quote, if everyone is a Republican, then no one is secretly a Democrat pretending to be a Republican, said Rachel Rodriguez Williams, the chairwoman of the House Freedom Caucus, in unveiling the new membership policy titled Operation Big Tent, or as John Baer, former chairman emeritus of the Freedom Caucus, called it, no, seriously, everybody get in here. Transparency has been achieved. Now, under the new rules...
Yes, I like your plan, except it sucks, so let me do the plan, and that way it might be really good.
Under the new rules, membership in the House Freedom Caucus is automatic upon registration as a Republican. And this was done because everybody who even aligns with the House Freedom Caucus is accused of being a member of the Freedom Caucus. The most recent example of this is Ogden Driscoll debasing himself on the cow pie yesterday. You know, I mean, everything that guy said is, I mean, he mistook yesterday for today being April Fool's Day, because the only thing that he got right is that he is going to get another article on the Open Range Record. But anyway, the move by the Freedom Caucus is being done to just eliminate that problem of people hiding in the Republican Party. Let's see here. So under the new rules, membership in the Freedom Caucus is automatic upon registration as a Republican. Suspected registration as a Republican, or, quote, having Republican adjacent vibes. A forthcoming amendment may extend eligibility to anyone who ever said, well, I'm fiscally conservative, but, before taking off to the ambiguity. Now, to help voters along with this transition, the Secretary of State will distribute updated guides clarifying that, quote, all Republicans are now members of the Freedom Caucus. Now, and also that some Democrats are Republicans and some Republicans are Democrats. Now, Ogden Driscoll yesterday on the cow pie in an interview, and in an effort to maintain his very last shred of credibility, encouraged everyone to remain calm and continue voting as if all of this makes sense. Freedom Caucus member Ken Pendergraft raised concerns that the policy could dilute the caucus's ideological identity. However, fellow caucus member Steve Johnson countered that this presumes that such an identity is still identifiable to begin with. Meanwhile, voters have expressed cautious optimism. Quote, I used to worry about who I really was, said one Sheridan resident. Now I don't have to. They're all in the same group. It's very comforting. Like a political lost and found, but nobody really ever picks anything up. Now, jokingly, Governor Mark Gordon sent out an email, as he often does in political fashion, stating that he was considering additional reforms to the Freedom Caucus plan, including a universal ballot labeled simply yes, no, or depends on who's asking, and a pilot program allowing voters to just register as, well, just surprise me. Rachel Rodriguez Williams, chairman of the caucus and now candidate for Secretary of State, brushed aside the criticism by pointing out that Gordon himself will benefit from the new policy, adding that they are proud to have restored clarity to Wyoming politics. From this day forward, Rodriguez Williams concluded, there will be no confusion about who belongs, because everyone does. Now, the policy shift has also given rise to an unexpected demographic. Recovering Democrats, individuals who are now registered Republicans but can no longer recall the exact sequence of events that led them there. Support groups have begun forming quietly across the state, often in community centers, coffee shops, and in at least one case, the seasonal aisle of the hardware store. Meetings typically begin with a simple introduction. Hi, my name is Steve, and I think I switched parties in 2018 when it became politically convenient to vote for Cheney. Or maybe I just checked a different box. I'm not entirely sure anymore. Participants describe a shared experience of gradual political amnesia. It often starts with a primary election, then a form, then a fleeting thought. Maybe I'll switch back later. Months pass and then years, and at some point they find themselves passionately defending positions they vaguely remember disagreeing with while still subscribing to newsletters that suggest otherwise. It's not that my beliefs have changed, said one voter. It's just that my registration got ahead of me. Now, see, Ken, this is a big problem in Wyoming, and it has been for a really long time, that Democrats register as Republicans and then hang out in the Republican Party. So I'm glad that you guys have come up with a plan to eliminate that problem.
Oh, come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help, help, I'm being repressed!
Help, you're
Bloody
being
peasant!
repressed.
That's about 5-6 minutes of my life I'll never get back.
Wait, there's more. It's not that my beliefs have changed, said one voter. It's just my registration got ahead of me. Now, to assist these individuals, Freedom Caucus State Director Jesse Rubino has introduced a new partisan memory recovery packet. It's going to include a timeline of major elections that a member may or may not remember voting in, a checklist entitled, "Did I really mean to do this?" and a flowchart that begins with, "Do you feel confused?" and ends invariably with, "You are currently a Republican." Now, the House Freedom Caucus has welcomed recovering Democrats with open arms, noting that their presence further reinforces the group's commitment to inclusivity and in distinction. Now, we don't ask where you came from, said State Freedom Caucus President Adam Roth, mostly because it becomes clear that nobody really knows. In fact, recovering Democrats have quickly become some of the caucus's most active members, often bringing a unique perspective shaped by their uncertain pasts. Quote, "They ask a lot of questions," Representative Scott Smith noted, sometimes about policy, sometimes about themselves. To accommodate this, caucus meetings now include a brief segment entitled, "Why Am I Here?" during which members are encouraged to reflect, speculate, and if necessary, all shrug collectively. Now, despite the confusion, many recovering Democrats report a sense of peace. There's something freeing about it, newly minted member Bob Nicholas said. "I used to worry about labels. Now, I just accept who I am. Maybe the form says who I am." Experts suggest that the phenomenon may represent a new phase in political identity, one less about ideology and more about administrative momentum. As Wyoming continues to redefine its approach to transparency, officials are optimistic that eventually the system will reach its logical conclusion, a fully unified electorate where party affiliation is both universal and entirely incidental. Until then, recovering Democrats will continue their journey not towards one party or another, but toward the faint, distant memory of having once made a deliberate choice. Now, Ken, I have to tell you, I find this plan enthralling.
Are you through yet?
No, I'm actually not. But you have to admit, one of the biggest problems in Wyoming politics is Democrats who claim to be Republicans.
Or opinionists who fabricate things
This is,
and call it news.
This is satire, and I never claimed that this was real news. This is April 1st. Now, in a final twist that left even the most seasoned observers blinking slowly into the middle distance, sources now suggest that the entire phenomenon, cross-registrations, recovering Democrats, and the great Wyoming identity blur, may not have been accidental at all. According to a statement that was neither confirmed nor denied, but strongly implied through a series of meaningful pauses, the effort was, in fact, orchestrated from the beginning by the Freedom Caucus itself. The objective? Radical transparency, or more specifically, a long-form, multi-year experiment designed to expose what insiders describe as the ultimate political truth hiding in plain sight. That truth, the statement suggests, is that Ogden Driscoll, Bo Beitman, and Tara Nethercott were, all along, Democrats. The room reportedly fell silent when the conclusion was unveiled, followed by the sound of several people rechecking their own voter registrations just to be safe. Quote, "We had to create a system so thoroughly confusing," said Freedom Caucus Chairman Emeritus John Baer, "that the only thing left standing would be the truth, or at least a truth, preferably our truth." That the strategy, dubbed Operation Reflective Prairie, relied on a simple premise, that even if enough people switched parties, forgot why, and joined the same group anyway, eventually that distinction between Republican and Democrat would collapse inward, revealing, at its core, whoever the caucus needed it to reveal. Critics have called the plan needlessly elaborate, philosophically unsettling, and possibly just a very long joke. But caucus members remain confident in the outcome. Quote, "You can't argue with results," said Baer, as he often does. "We set out to eliminate confusion, and no one knows anything." That's real clarity. As for those named in the revelation, responses have ranged from polite disagreement to extended pizza parties in Beitman's office. Meanwhile, recovering Democrats have expressed a renewed sense of purpose, relieved to discover that their confusion may have been part of something larger all along, or at least adjacent to it. State officials are now considering whether to formally recognize the entire episode as either a political innovation or a weather event. For now, Wyoming voters are left to navigate a landscape where everyone belongs, no one is entirely sure why, and the truth, whatever that may be, has been successfully brought to the surface, examined, and gently set back down, somewhere slightly different. In the end, the House Freedom Caucus stands vindicated, having proven once and for all that in modern politics, identity is fluid, affiliation is optional, and reality itself is, at best, not what the voter registration says it is. Well, there's your news from the Freedom Caucus this morning. See, there. I claimed that it was news. Let's take a break, and we'll be back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only
Cowboy State Politics is only getting stronger. This program, Cowboy State Politics Live, the Cowboy State Politics Podcast, and of course, the Open Range Record. Quick, Ken, put my screen up so everybody can see the lunacy coming from the cow pie. No, seriously. Aha! It has to be April Fool's Day because the cow pie has one of the biggest buffoons in Wyoming politics, Tyler Lindholm, on the show. The guy that claims to be a conservative and yet funds every moronic liberal in the Wyoming legislature. And while we're all right, that's enough of that. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now let's go to a segment recorded a little bit ago on the cow pie. Here's Megan Degenfelder on with Jeff Ricketts, who, by the way, this guy is just down the street. If you didn't know, he also lives in Sheridan. He's got one of those radio voices that just irritates the crap out of you. I'm live down at the local car wash, something like that. Anyway, here is Megan Degenfelder earlier on the cow pie. Listen to this.
Yeah, the bill, there was part of the bill that the Governor Gordon objected to, called the instructional silo, and didn't sign the bill into law. He let it pass without his approval. He objected to the instructional silo. I mean, do you agree with Governor Gordon's frustration with that part?
Look, I know that a lot of school districts were frustrated with this because it takes away from that block grant concept. But at the end of the day, the intention is to protect the salaries of teachers.
Oh, yeah, pause, stop. Wait, hold on. So why indeed were school districts frustrated with the changing of the funding mechanism? Well, it's because they had been used to using money that was intended for the classroom everywhere else. And there is no better evidence that when the legislature passed an 8.5% raise for all school employees, it wasn't just teachers, it was everybody. It was the secretary, the custodian, teachers, the whole shooting match. And what did school districts do with that money? Riddle me this, riddle me that. They spent it elsewhere, probably on scoreboards or football pads or basketballs for their champion basketball team.
I think there was some other proof there in the floor debate. We were talking about the silos, and they fought that so hard on the floor.
Absolutely.
And they said, but what about this? We won't be able to pay for this. We won't be able to pay for that. Won't be able to pay for this. Which exactly made the point. No, this money is designed for the teachers because we're getting sued because they're unhappy. We gave you a chance. We gave you several chances. You guys failed. We had to rein it in.
Well, the floor debate was absolutely incredible, Ken. I mean, there were people that actually said, we have to be able to take money that is meant for the classroom, and these are my words, but essentially the debate was, we have to be able to take this money and spend it elsewhere. And again, the most, in my mind, the most obvious proof of that was that 8.5% raise that didn't go to teachers. And then administrators wrote op-eds to their local papers explaining why they had to take that money and go somewhere else with it, when the bill literally said raises. Now, of course, the legislature, until the passage of this most recent calibration, couldn't really tell the schools how to spend their money because everything came in a block grant. Well, that's all changed. So let's go ahead and continue with the video.
For those dollars.
That's
and so,
cool.
Again, we're going to be able to work through this with school districts. I know there's a lot of fear of them, of how this all shakes out, but we got to protect our teacher salaries. And I just don't see anything wrong with that.
No, not at all. Representative Hageman endorsed you for governor. That had to be huge.
Huge. I respect and admire her so much. The work that Representative Hageman has done for us in Washington, D.C. is nothing short of incredible, whether it's protecting our legacy industries or our kids and the rights of parents. And so it's just such an honor to have her endorsement as well as President Trump's as I head into this campaign season.
Enough of that. Maybe you're impressed with Representative Hageman, and I am too. I really like Harriet. The person I am not impressed with is Superintendent of Public Instruction Megan Degenfelder. Answer this. Name one conservative thing, just one conservative thing that Megan Degenfelder has done or accomplished. I'll wait. I need some Jeopardy music here.
I was listening for crickets.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know. I don't have crickets on the board here anymore. I took them off. But the point is, there isn't a single conservative thing that Superintendent Degenfelder has accomplished. Even on my program, I asked her twice to explain why test scores have not improved, and she dodged the question both times. By the way, Superintendent, you are welcome on this program anytime you like. In fact, I think you should, because there's an article coming on the Open Range Record that might convince some people that perhaps you're not the right person for the governor's mansion.
I asked her in committee about those scores.
What'd she say?
I said, at what point does it get so bad, because half the kids can't read, that the legislature sues the school Department of Education for a crappy product?
Yeah.
And, of course, she had to dance around that one. We might pull that up sometime.
Yeah, I think we probably should. But the point is, and for the life of me, I have no idea why Harriet Hageman, no logical idea, why Harriet Hageman endorsed Megan Degenfelder, because she's not the conservative in the race at all. And all you have to do is look at her votes on the slip board. When it got closer to the time she would have to announce that she was running for governor, her votes changed. Similarly, with everything that's going on in Sweetwater County, which, by the way, that's what that article is about. That's coming out this afternoon, probably. Well, then she tried to do something about the school system down there, but it wasn't before then. When all of the complaints were piling up on her desk, she didn't lift a finger. But now, well, now it's campaign season, and we have to do that. So anyway, I mean, it's just absolutely frustrating. And I challenge anybody to give me one conservative thing that Megan Degenfelder has done. And you won't find one. Okay, let's go to the Powell Tribune, and this one's interesting only in the response of the school district. This piece is entitled "School District to Work on Policy to Address Potential of Employees Joining the Legislature." And I quote, "Park County School District number 1, Superintendent Jay Curtis said in 16 years at the helm of the school districts, he's never had an employee express a desire to run for office. In 16 years. Now, with the school board's approval, Curtis will be working to tweak a policy in place at Campbell County. I don't know why. Oh, that's in Gillette. Interesting. Okay. That addresses how it works if an employee, in Gillette's case, just teachers, but in Powell, it would include all staff, is indeed elected to something like the state legislature and is gone for 20 or 40 days each year. Quote, "I'm a little torn because it's hard for me to think of a teacher being out of the classroom, but I also understand that we are a citizen legislature, and it may not be overly fair that certain professions are able to have all those offices and other professions are not because of the restrictions." Now, this next paragraph is bizarre to me. As if the rest of the grammar in this thing isn't, but this next paragraph says, quote, "It's unusual but not without precedent for school employees to serve in the legislature. Representative Steve Harshman, for instance, has been both a longtime legislator, football coach, and high school teacher. Harshman has been in the legislature for decades. And it is therefore not unusual for teachers to be involved in the legislature. For teachers who have expressed interest this year, the cost to hire a long-term sub will be largely covered by the employee paying back their salary received as a legislator, at this point $150 a day, which Curtis said will be close to covering that expense."
Julie Jarvis, McKay Erickson, Alicia Campbell.
Mm-hmm. Whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
Right. It's not unusual, nor is it unprecedented. And and this article is an attempt to and they're building a narrative is what they're doing. And the narrative is simple. The legislature is attacking education. And so the people in education have to defend education. I mean, that's what they're driving at. That we don't have a voice in Cheyenne. That's the point.
And it's kind of a concerted effort because you also see it where the university is combined. I think it was Wildfile that had the article about we only have one university. Can it survive the legislature?
Yeah. I mean, it is a narrative that has been, and frankly, I think it's been pretty well crafted, that the legislature is attacking the university. I mean, and that's the line that we're fed. The truth is, the legislature funds the university and therefore is required to provide oversight of the university.
But that's, for them, that is ground zero. That is the front lines of this cultural battle. And that's where we're at, is they're in there trying to brainwash our children and being, frankly, rather successful at it. And we're starting to say that's enough of that, and causes some conflict.
Well, the question is, does the university, is it reflective of the state as a whole? Well, I would say no. Man, when you travel to UW, it doesn't take you long. If you just walk around the campus, it does not take you long to see that the culture on that campus is very different from the culture in the rest of the state. Yeah. Now, maybe on a Saturday in Sheridan around the courthouse steps, the culture is similar. But really, I mean, you walk around that campus and you'll see all sorts of pride flags. And I mean, you don't have to look very hard. But the public portrayal of what the university is doing, and this is given to the legislatures, oh, we're working on it. We're making changes. Yet when it is the legislature that says, look, we represent the 10,000 or 20,000 people back home, and they're telling me that there are problems at the university, which is why a lot of conservatives got elected. One of the reasons why.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I can tell you that I got some emails, some of them rather passionate. What are you doing to our blessed university? You know, we can't survive this way. All kinds of hyperbole. But I also got countless emails. Thank you for saying something. Thank you for trying to steer them back. So there's a, I hate to use a worn out phrase, a silent majority, but it's still there.
Well, it is not. And here's the, you know, I said that the legislature funds the university. That's not accurate. Wyoming taxpayers fund the university.
Oh, no. Minerals.
Yeah.
That's our mineral wealth. And there's some truth to that, but whose minerals are they?
Exactly. You know, the government, like the state government, doesn't have any money of its own, nor does it own the minerals. All of that is owned by the people. Look at Article 1, Section 1 of the Wyoming
according
Constitution.
to Ogden Driscoll and Mike Giroux. They said in concert, it's not their money.
Yeah, well, that's the attitude, right?
Yeah.
Like once that revenue or that cash hits Cheyenne, well, then you've got a lot of legislators that think that it is theirs, that it no longer belongs to the people, that it's that the legislature can do whatever they want with it. Well, that's the reason why a whole bunch of conservatives have been elected, because frankly, there's a lot of people that don't agree with that.
You remember them telling Chip several years back, "You're one of us.
You're one of us now."
Yeah.
Ooh. All right. Well, let's move on. So the governor has, and if you haven't subscribed to the governor's mailing list, I don't suggest that you do that, because you'll get inundated with his drivel. On brand. Well, in a recent email to everybody on his mailing list, he unveiled what he's calling his Adopt a Windmill program. This is fascinating, and you're going to love it, Ken. With the battle, and quoting from allegedly that email.
Is it still April 1st?
With the battle involving windmills across Wyoming, the governor's office has announced some exciting news for the environmental cause going forward. And as we know, Governor Gordon is a longtime environmentalist. There's a great, I think it's 2001, 2002 piece in the High Country News, which pretty much, I mean, it's not a direct quote from the governor, but it says when he's not ranching, he was fighting the development of coal bed methane in Wyoming. So, I mean, he was the treasurer of the Sierra Club. And so, I mean, the governor, I mean, he's all in with this windmill program. Let me tell you about it. So the governor says that 100% of all future windmills will be placed in those Wyoming towns with more than 40% registered Democrats. They will also have an adoption plan, like other ones: adopt a road, adopt a trail, etc. Wyoming will have a new Adopt a Windmill program where Democrats can be responsible for up to 10 windmills. This is fantastic. This is, we see those adopt a highway signs up and down the roadway where environmentally conscious people pick up trash. Well, this is the same thing, that, picking up trash around windmills. Duties will be maintaining the functioning, contacting the state if any issues arise, and checking the input-output of each windmill daily, maintaining the roads and trails leading to their adopted windmills, and lastly, ensuring that they are wiped down daily and cleaned. Nobody wants an eyesore now, do they? The three cities selected to kick off this awesome environmental-friendly push will be Jackson with 2,500 windmills, Laramie with 3,000 windmills, and Cheyenne with 3,500 windmills. And as part of the plan, they'll be transporting the windmills from Casper that really never got turned on anyway, and those will be implanted right in direct view of the Capitol building in Cheyenne, just to remind everybody in the legislature how important protecting the environment actually is. Now, if you're interested in having a windmill placed on your actual property, you can do that too. All you have to do is notify the governor's office immediately. Adopt a Windmill has been approved for individual properties, so long as you have 1/10 of an acre. How exciting. Put that environmental passion to work. Notify the governor's office today.
Let's put about 100 of those in Grand Teton National Park, right in front of the Tetons.
Well, yeah, I mean, the 2,500 that the governor announced, that's just to get started.
Yeah.
And most of them, at least a couple of them, are going to be on that hill that's right above Grand Teton, or Snow King Mountain. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I can see one in the bend there, right in front of Mount Moran.
Yes,
that would really enhance the.
Well, they've got a lot of open space. You turn the corner from Moran Junction and head towards Jackson, and it's just that big open field. And the governor thought, well, why would we reserve this for bird watching when we can put up some windmills and kill a bunch of birds?
Where they should put them is right at the bottom of the canyon coming into Cody.
That would be great.
That is a wind funnel right there.
Yeah.
You just line them up.
I mean, think about the power that could be produced right there. But, the governor is excited about this, and though he didn't respond to a request for comment from Cowboy State Politics, I suggest you contact the governor's office immediately and request a windmill for your own property. Here's another one, and I'm not exactly sure if this one is April Fool's or not, but it is from the Daily Caller. Trump admits the ballroom was cover for something secret buried underneath it. And this one, okay, enough with the tomfoolery, but I did check a couple different sources on this one. So here we go. President Trump said late Sunday that his new White House ballroom will act as a shed for the massive military complex being built underneath it. Quote, now the military is building a big complex underneath the ballroom, which has come out recently because of a stupid lawsuit that was filed, Trump told reporters on Air Force One. But the military is building a massive complex under the ballroom, and that's already under construction, and we're doing very well. Quote, we have all bulletproof glass. We have drone-proof roofs and ceilings, the president added. Unfortunately, we're living in an age where that's actually a good thing. U.S. President Donald Trump looks through a window. That's a long caption on that. Anyway, before confirming the plans Sunday night, Trump said at a cabinet meeting Thursday that the military wanted the ballroom renovations more than anybody. It was supposed to be a secret, Trump said, but it became unsecret because the people that are really unpatriotic. In October of 2025, the Daily Caller's Mary Rook noted that the Presidential Emergency Operations Center, the president's bunker, is located underneath the East Wing where the ballroom will be built. She also pointed to the general air of secrecy surrounding the project and how the U.S. Treasury Department instructed its employees not to share or snap pictures of the demolition because, quote, they could potentially reveal sensitive items. It is the White House, after all. So I don't know if this is actually true or not. Like I said, it is April Fool's, but I did look at a couple different sources, and I don't know where the presidential bunker is at.
I just had this picture of a bunch of people out on the dance floor, and all of a sudden the floor splits open and starts to separate. Everybody shuffles off to the side, and a couple of Minutemen missiles come up out of the floor.
Well, I think that would be great. Speaking of great images, there's a video that I've got prepped, and it's actually the renderings of the Trump Presidential Library. Go ahead and play that, Ken.
I'm getting there.
Well, we're waiting. Here we go.
There it is.
That is not the Trump Presidential Library.
No, but it's pretty, ain't it?
Well, yeah, it's true. It would be. All right, Presidential Library.
That's in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Oh, we got to have some sound.
He had to build it even bigger if his name was Pendergraft.
It would, yeah, that'd be huge. 47 floors, they say this thing's going to be.
Where's the gold statue of Trump himself?
You'll see it.
There it is.
There it is. There's the ballroom. I don't know. I think the thing would be pretty cool, and if it's Trump's presidential library, you know that it's got to be a big tower, and it's got to be pretty opulent. I mean, that's just him. What do you think, Ken? I mean, I think it'd be an awesome place.
Well, you could also use that word "awesome" to describe Obama's library.
Well, do we have a picture of that thing?
We can probably find one after the break, but
it's ugly.
That is the Ministry of Truth.
It is. I mean, and it looks like it too. I mean, It is just a ridiculously ugly building. All right, let's go ahead and take another break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the program. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. There we go. Both presidential libraries, the one that's proposed and the actual ugly one that is built in Chicago. Can you believe anybody ever even approved that thing? I think you aptly named it, Ken, the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah.
Man.
It's disconcerting.
Disconcerting, to say the least. It's actually a style of architecture called brutalism. And it's, stark, stone-faced, buildings, kind of like the, if you look at the Hoover building, that's another good example of it, just this giant monstrosity, few windows, just this big imposing blob.
Yeah. Makes me think they're going to put a rat in a cage and attach it to my face and come eat my eyeballs out.
That could be. It could be.
For those of you that are
1984
Winston fans.
Yeah, that was such a great book. I need to read that one again.
Yeah.
All right, from the Federalist. Republicans would rather cede power to Democrats than their own voters. And think about this. For how long have citizens been shouting at their senators and representatives to pass the Save America Act? I mean, this should not be this big of a lift. Like, pretty much everybody that is opposed to it, Chuck U. Schumer included, they're on video saying we need to have voter ID.
Half of the Wyoming legislature is opposed to it.
Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. Here's what the Federalist says. Just when you think the Senate GOP couldn't get any more useless than it already is, its members find a way to prove you wrong. While the Save America Act continues to languish, the Department of Homeland Security remains unfunded, and dozens of Trump nominees await confirmation. Senate Majority Leader, the feckless John Thune, did what any typical Republican would do. He sent the upper chamber home on a 2-week vacation. That was only after he sent a bill to the House of Representatives that would not fund the TSA, and it would not fund ICE operations. While the entirely predictable scenario came about after Senate Republicans agreed with Democrats to pass a DHS package devoid of ICE and Border Patrol funding in the early hours of Friday morning. The GOP maintained that the latter two agencies would be funded via reconciliation to overcome the Democrats' procedural blockade. To their credit, House Republicans rejected that swampy proposal. The lower chamber instead passed a short-term continuing resolution that temporarily funds DHS, including ICE and the Border Patrol. But rather than force senators to stay in session to consider that measure, other proposals, or even debate the Save America Act, that is, actually put up a fight about anything, John Thune sent everybody home. Although home may not be the best descriptor for some senators, the unmarried and childless Lindsey Graham took a break from giving his asinine Iran takes to parade around Walt Disney World over the weekend, and even got a bubble wand to prove it. Demoralizing their base and independent voters may seem like a baffling decision, considering that the 2026 midterms are mere months away. That is, until you realize that for some Republicans, that's the entire point. As the Federalist previously noted, GOP's leadership's refusal to abide by their voters' wishes and actually fight for their interests, like pass the SAVE Act, stems from their desire to maintain the D.C. status quo. If Republican voters begin to see themselves as citizens who hold power to influence their elected officials and enact real change, the do-nothing system the establishment has spent years building will come crashing down. For too many within the GOP caucus, that's unacceptable. So unacceptable that many within the GOP conference would be fine ceding power to the Democrats for an election cycle than to voters within their own party for generations. And that, my friends, is the point. That the establishment GOP is intent on maintaining their power. They can't allow the election to happen and for voters to choose who it is that represents them. It is the establishment people in the GOP, both at the national level and the state level, that have decided that it is better to rig the game than it is to represent their own citizens.
When I listen to you say that, I think, what power have they? And, you look at what Congress has done over the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Just moved, marched, slid farther and farther to the left. And I always describe it as like the Globetrotters. They come out to play, and you got to have the Washington Nationals or whatever they're called
Yeah.
as their foe. And their only job is to lose gracefully and make the other side look better. And I think that's what the national GOP has been, besides being a gross embarrassment. But what power have they? What power have they exhibited?
Not a lot.
There was a little flair in Newt Gingrich's day.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it's miserable.
Well, and they elect feckless leader after feckless leader. Think about John Boehner. What an embarrassment that guy was. I mean, he was the perfect example of there being no difference between Republicans and Democrats.
So when John Thune was chosen, the way I remember it, there were three Johns. I think it was John Thune and John
Cornyn and
John Barrasso. And I thought, how come John doesn't? He was pretty content to just go for the number 2 guy. And I thought, how come he doesn't jump up there and grab the bull by the horns? And then I thought, there's probably a part of him that knew that he wasn't going to be able to change anything, and he didn't want to take the blame for it.
Well, that's the main point.
Yeah, for somebody coming from Wyoming, he'd be just like Liz Cheney. His feet would have been held to the fire a little more so than they have been now. But still, I'm done, John.
Yeah, I mean it is absolutely an embarrassment what's happening in the U.S. Senate, and just think about this: like every single time there is a new Republican leader, there's fanfare that comes out. Oh, we're going to have a conservative majority in the House or in the Senate. Well, it's the same way in the House. I mentioned John Boehner, but it's always the same. We're gonna have a change. We're gonna run things the way the Senate is supposed to be run, and yet Thune sends a bill to the House that doesn't do the things that voters are demanding. Pass the Save America Act. And a lot of it is flipping a middle finger to the Trump administration, because President Trump came out and said that he's not going to sign anything until the Save America Act is passed. Well, then, for the GOP establishment, that means they're not going to do any work. And the truth is, at the state level, it is very much the same thing. Instead of trying to allow the local grassroots to run the party. See, that's the phrase that they love to use, is that, well, this is a grassroots party. This party is run by the grassroots. Really? That's why you have the state chairman running a bylaw amendment to exclude his opponents. And that was the main purpose of it. People like you and me, Ken, not that you would want to be in GOP leadership, but it would have affected you.
If by grassroots you mean somebody that has spent years serving in boards and committees and chambers of communists and et cetera, that's their idea of grassroots. Our idea of grassroots is, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go to Cheyenne and raise some hell.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way you and I think of it, but that is not how the folks that are in the upper echelons of the state GOP and the national GOP, the RNC. I mean, it is establishment person after establishment person. And here's an interesting thing about this. And I mentioned this, I don't know, it was last week, I think, that what you're seeing is the emergence of a new Republican establishment. I mean, really, it's the same one, but with new characters in it. And what you saw is some people that recognized, and this is just my theory, and I think that events are starting to prove it out. But you had a whole bunch of people that saw that conservatism, that had the foresight to see that conservatism was on the rise, and so they were the people that were, campaigning as actual grassroots type conservatives. People like Dennis Beitman. Okay, for his first two terms, that guy was pretty conservative. In fact, he was right up there near the top of just about all of the ratings, right up there with Bob Ide in his first two terms. And then when he becomes Senate president, he presides over 2 years that saw the biggest lurch to the left in the Wyoming Senate in years. For a long time, we were moving the Wyoming Senate further to the right. Think about the budget session 2 years ago, how they were cutting. I mean, they were more conservative than the House was. There were so many spending proposals that would go from the House to the Senate that would die over there. Well, now, we looked it up before the show. So the Senate's version of the budget was $1 million over what the governor requested, and the House's version was $170 million below. And then Ogden Driscoll, one of the main figures of the Senate establishment, gets on the cow pie yesterday and claims that, oh no, see, we were $100 million below. I mean, an absolute bald-faced lie. And then he takes credit for all the work that the House did. You see, what has happened is those folks who recognized conservatism was on the rise, jumped out as leaders of that movement, and then when they got into power, they realized that it is much easier to maintain their power than it is to be the faux conservatives that they really are. And so they changed the rules. They give away the Senate's committees to the left. They try to move the goalposts in any way that they possibly can, up to and including excluding those people who would stand in opposition to that. To say when we had our convention here in Sheridan County, I was giving my speech about this stupid bylaw proposal, and the chairman of the bylaws committee interrupted me. And he says, well, are you just opposed because this would personally affect you? No, I'm opposed because it's wrong. No, I didn't say that during the convention. I think I said something to the effect of, that doesn't have anything to do with it. But yes, this would affect me. The point is that, we shouldn't be in a position, we shouldn't put ourselves in a position to where we just exclude those folks that disagree with us. I mean, that's what the Senate did this year down in Cheyenne. If you were a conservative in the Wyoming Senate, you were pretty much marginalized. Yeah, you could stand up and give speeches. Yeah, you could propose amendments, but none of those were going anywhere.
You sure as hell won't chair a committee.
Nope, you're not going to have a committee, not at all. Well, he couldn't because Dennis Beitman, Bo, had already given all those committees to the liberals. And, it is absolutely incredible when you take a larger view of this. And you know what's funny? Like, the folks that are in power in Wyoming, all the time you hear them say, in the Senate I'm referring to, well, we don't want D.C.-style politics here in Wyoming. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. That they pretend to be conservative, they get in power, and then they do everything that the left wants.
I think that's the one lie that rubs me the wrong way worse than any other, is here you, Johnny-come-lately out-of-staters, taking money from out of state.
Yeah.
The only policies that you're running is stuff that's coming to you from some national deal. And if you vote well enough, you get $30,000.
Yeah, that was Ed Cooper that said that one in a newspaper. And frankly, Ogden Driscoll said that yesterday on the Cowboy. It is a bald-faced lie. When that thing came out, I interviewed Andy Roth on this program and just point blank asked him, so are you cutting $30,000 checks to people who vote right? And he just laughed. He goes, well, there's only one person that can answer that question.
I never saw a $30 check.
What? Oh, you got gypped, man. According to Ogden and Ed Cooper, you guys are raking it in. I mean, it is lie your way to the top. And when you get there, do everything you can to maintain your own power. And I'm not just talking about the Senate. I'm talking about the Wyoming GOP. also. It's when you're proposing policies to exclude people, that's exactly what you're doing. You know what? Let's go ahead and take an early break, and we'll come back, and I've got a great piece. This one's from the Turkey Vulture, and it's about that Kappa Kappa Gamma lawsuit. Turns out we're going after the lawyers now. Some of them deserve it, some of them don't, but I'll tell you about it in just a second. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Wednesday, April Fool's Day. Let's go ahead and dip into Fox News right now. The Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments concerning birthright citizenship.
That understanding was confirmed by Congress with its 1940 Act. The 14th Amendment's fixed, bright-line rule has contributed to the growth and thriving of our nation. It comes from text and history. It is workable, and it prevents manipulation. The executive order fails on all those counts. Swaths of American laws would be rendered senseless. Thousands of American babies will immediately lose their citizenship. And if you credit the government's theory, the citizenship of millions of Americans, past, present, and future, could be called into question. All of this tells us the government's theory is wrong. I welcome the court's questions.
There are 5 exceptions to citizenship that you do accept.
Yes, depending on how many you count, Justice Thomas, how you count them.
What is the underlying rule of law that you use to connect these 5 exceptions?
Sure. So as I just said, all of the exceptions involve situations where that U.S.-born child is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States because that extraterritoriality, the fiction of extraterritoriality, the interaction of another sovereign between the United States' jurisdiction and that person applies to the child as well as to the parent. Everyone else born in the United States is subject to the United States' jurisdiction. To answer Justice Barrett's question to my friend, that's what sets those exceptions apart from other U.S.-born persons.
We've heard a lot of talk about long Kimark, and you dismiss the use of the word domicile in it. It appears in the opinion 20 different times, and including in the question presented and in the actual legal holding. And the government doesn't want it to be overruled because it relies on, it will
All right,
rely
well,
on
let's,
that particular fact in that.
I'll try to keep an eye on the TV, and if anything happens, maybe we'll dip back in. But it's an interesting question, though, isn't it, Ken? I mean, we've been led to believe, man, ever since I was in school, that if you're born in the U.S., that makes you a citizen. But that's not necessarily the case.
It shouldn't be.
Well, I don't think it should be either.
Yeah. It just creates all kind. And now, I know it sounds cruel. Okay, you're a racist pig because you. No, I see the dangers that are occurring for that, and this anchor baby situation becomes quite a mess.
Well, yeah, and it's actually spawned an entire industry overseas that pregnant women pay a crap load of money to essentially an international coyote that says, yeah, we'll get you into the United States, and then they have their kid here, and then the kid is a citizen, and then you can't separate the kid from the mother. Well, then of course you have to have their whole family over here because we're fans of family values. I mean, it just spawns a giant industry.
It takes a village.
Okay,
bring your whole village over.
But I mean, that's the terminal result. And I mean, there's nowhere in the Constitution that says if you're born here, you're a citizen. I mean, that's been the practice. But I think this is an interesting case in that, and it stems from an executive order. And that's another thing that I have some real heartburn with, that our country was never set up to rule by edict. In fact, that's one of the things that we objected to with King George, is that the laws are arbitrary to whatever the whims of the king were. And I'm not saying that that's the case with Trump, but every president has issued executive orders. It was Obama that said, if Congress doesn't act, I have a pen and a phone, implying that he'll just do whatever he wants. With the student loan forgiveness, Obama openly said, well, I know that this isn't constitutional, but I'm going to do it anyway. Well, where'd the rule of law go?
You remember Obama?
Oh, yes, I remember him.
You didn't build that.
Yep, I was there.
So I look at that and say, the rank and file American in flyover country worked a small business, worked a job, worked a farm, whatever, built this place, while other people really didn't do anything except sit around and bitch and moan about it and organize communities, organize No Kings protests.
Yeah.
And to me, that's projection at its very worst, is they know they didn't do anything to build this.
Yeah.
All they've been is tearing it down. And so then they assume, well, nobody built this. It just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we have that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Bull crap. Absolute 100% bull crap. You know who built all those roads and bridges? Your taxes. And it's, for a president, and I remember this clear as day. I was with my boss in Arlington. And when we heard that, I looked, this guy built his own construction business, about a $20 million, at the time, I think it was like a $20 million business. And I just looked at him like, I cannot believe that you're nodding your head with this. My boss at the time was a raging Democrat. He actually knew Barack Obama. But yeah, I was just flabbergasted. That a U.S. president would say that if you built your own private business, that you didn't build that, somebody else made that happen. How incredibly shocking. But you see, that's the same mentality that we see in Cheyenne. It's not their money anymore. It's our money.
Part of the flaw in that starts at the very beginning of his talk. He says, maybe you had a teacher that helped you out.
Yeah.
Guess who paid that teacher?
We did.
And it goes on and on. And there's the difference between those who actually produce a product or a service and provide to build the economy, and those who simply live off of the excess from the economy.
Yeah.
And then seek to tear it down.
Well, the other night, maybe it was last week, the lovely Christine and I were sitting in the living room, had Fox News going, and, she's finishing up her paperwork from the salon. And she looked at me and she said, there really isn't a day that we don't work. And I said, well, honey, that's because we own a couple of businesses. That's what happens when you own your own business.
Yeah, if you're awake, you're working.
Yep, you are working. And I guarantee you that this phone, it doesn't ring all the time, but it rings at all hours of the night. I was talking to one of your colleagues last night at about 10:30. After I listened to that tirade from Ogden Driscoll, and but that happens regularly. one of the first dates that Christine and I had, I think my phone rang at, I don't know, it was like 6:00, and it may even have been you, Ken.
I hope so.
And then, you're on a date, right? So, you don't really want to be disturbed. And I said, well, don't worry about it. That'll probably be the last call. And then I got another call from one of the state senators, and I was like, it'll be okay. I'm sure that's the last call. And then the Secretary of State called me. And then a little bit later, Representative Hageman called me.
The good part about that is that she can never say she didn't know what she was getting into.
Oh, that's absolutely true. She knew. All right, I got to tell you this one. So I actually met my wife online, and we chatted for a little bit. And finally, I just said, "Hey, do you want to pretend that it's like 2006 and let's just go have a cup of coffee and do away with this whole online business?" And so I drove to Sheridan, and we met for coffee. And we chatted for a little bit, had a very, very nice conversation. I was smitten from the very beginning. And at one point I said, well, I hate to cut this short. I said, but I have a luncheon I have to go to. I said, you're more than welcome to join me if you like. And she's like, really? Well, what is it? And I said, well, it's a little bit political. I said, but, I'm sure you'll be able to, hang right along. And it was the Republican women luncheon. And then I think may have been the third or fourth date. We drove to a Reagan Day dinner over in Hewlett. And so, from the very beginning, Christine knew exactly what she was getting with me. But, back to the original point that we have a bunch of politicians, many of whom have never signed a paycheck. And many of them claim, and I love this one, Ken, the people that don't know how to fill out a paycheck or know how to manage a payroll are the very people telling us we have to have business development. Josh Durrell has never had to operate a business. And he's the guy that's behind or the head of, an organization that has, $50-60 million at his disposal. But it is the very people that do not operate their own business that are the ones dictating to business how that business can run. How much of their income is going to be confiscated through taxes.
It reminds me of Ayn Rand.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
Atlas
scary.
Shrugged, man.
Yeah.
That's by the way, if you're interested in that, you should just watch the movies. There's a series of 3 movies. They get progressively worse, but it's much easier than reading that gigantic book. Ayn Rand is the only person.
I can't hardly believe you said that. But...
she's the only person that can take 30 pages to explain what the color red looks like. It's a great book, and you should read it, but you might be better off just watching the movie on that one. Not saying it's better. I'm saying it's easier.
Cliff notes.
Yeah, no kidding. From the Blaze. California man mysteriously found dead in a police cruiser parked outside of a police station days after being released from custody. Quote, "We don't know what took place here." A California man was found dead in the backseat of a police cruiser days after being released from custody. The circumstances around his death remain a mystery as his family seeks answers from local authorities. And I quote, "He was pronounced deceased here, in front of the police station. That doesn't make any sense to any of us. And this is not an April Fool's joke, by the way. This one actually happened. Eric Valencia was arrested earlier this month on suspicion of driving under the influence and child endangerment. He was released from custody due to a lack of evidence. Now, his family filed a missing persons report after they were unable to locate him. On March 26th, Valencia was found unresponsive in the back seat of an out-of-service police car parked in front of the Azusa Police Department station. Quote, "It is not uncommon for vehicles to be out of service and parked for days or weeks at a time, as we have a large fleet of emergency vehicles," Chief of Police Rocky Wenrick stated. The vehicle had been left unlocked, and it really should have been secured. You see, the problem is when you get in a police car, the door handles on the inside don't work. And so, yeah, this guy was released from custody, croaked in the police vehicle, and then they found him a little bit later. Ken, let's go ahead and listen to the Supreme Court again. Here's Samuel Alito.
State versus manual, which was the North Carolina decision that said, look, the rule in the United States from independence on has been the English common law rule. That explanation would be inconsistent.
But Ms. Wong,
yes.
Isn't that explanation, I take Justice Alito's point, and I think he actually makes a good one in the sense that it could be that Justice Gray emphasized domicile to help the public accept the outcome of this case. You're suggesting that the emphasis on domicile was not a part of the rule, meaning he wasn't saying you had to be like a foreigner who is doing everything they can and who can't be naturalized, but he might have emphasized those facts in this case precisely because Chinese immigrants were unwanted, precisely because he had to get this out into the public, and people were going to say, whoa, you're saying these people have to, this baby has to be a citizen? And so one could imagine that it was important from a standpoint of helping people accept this citizen rule under these circumstances to emphasize
okay,
that
all right. Helping people accept a rule. Okay, so she's not talking about a law. She's talking about, well, we got to help people accept a rule that this kid is a citizen. I mean, that's the problem right there, Ken, that we're not operating on a system of laws. I mean, we're talking about, continuing a country of, a system of men, not a system of laws. I mean, this is precisely the problem, is that we don't follow the law. And this is system wide. It's not just at the Supreme Court. I mean, how many laws, how many cases can you and I list off where there was absolute proof that something had, that a law had been violated, and then it sits on the Attorney General's desk and they do nothing with it? I mean, there is very little accountability whatsoever in our system. And it just seems like those folks who are in, in positions of power, they can just flout the law whenever they want. And, when we rise up and say, hey, this person needs to be held accountable, then we don't see anything. I mean, it is truly, truly destructive.
Never happens in Wyoming, though.
No, that's one of those
County
things that doesn't happen here.
DUIs.
Yeah, county commissioners, Bill. Well, you know what? Bill Novotny did get punished. He got a $1,000 fine and a year in jail for driving blackout drunk on the wrong way of the interstate, all the way from Sheridan to Buffalo, then eluded police for 8 miles and was found with an open container, and that's a $1,000 fine.
And now he's head of the county commissioners in Johnson County.
And now he is the head. Oh, he was at the time, too. All right, so let's see here. Let's go to the turkey vulture. And this has been an ongoing case. This is about the man who masqueraded as a woman and got accepted into a sorority. From the Turkey Vulture, an article entitled "Judge Issues Partial Summary Judgment in Lawsuit Against the KKG Kappa Kappa Gamma Case Lawyers." And I quote, Laramie County District Judge Nathaniel Hibben ordered summary judgment on 2 of the 4 claims in a lawsuit filed against the lawyers in the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority case. Now, there's one thing I want you to notice in this piece. It's from the Turkey Vulture. a paper in Wyoming. But remember, some of these things don't happen in Wyoming, or so we're told. The countersuit, which was filed in March of 2024, addressed allegations regarding the conduct of attorneys Cassie Craven and John Nepper, who helped Artemis Langford's, and that's not actually his real name. It's Dallin James Langford, and he went by Artemis. Artemis Langford's sorority sisters pursued legal action against her and the University of Wyoming's sorority chapter in a highly publicized lawsuit in 2023. Langford was the sorority's first transgender member, so-called transgender. Remember, Artemis Langford is a dude who thinks he's a woman. And though he was, and here's the sentence. Listen to this, Ken. Langford, quoting, Langford was the sorority's first transgender member, and though she was initiated by a majority vote, her sisterhood was ultimately legally challenged by 6 of her peers. The problem is that Artemis Langford is not a woman. Artemis Langford will never be a woman. He is a man who made a choice, and I don't even know if he got surgery, but the point here is what the media is doing. This is a paper in Wyoming claiming that a man dressing as a woman and behaving as a woman is somehow a woman. Let me repeat the whole sentence for you. Langford was the sorority's first transgender member, and though she was initiated by a majority vote, her sisterhood was ultimately legally challenged by 6 of her peers. The countersuit alleges that Craven and Nepper's actions while acting as legal representation for her peers subjected Langford to allegations regarding her physical appearance, academic record, and personal conduct covered at a local, national, and international level. In an order filed March 30th, Hibben covered what aspects of the countersuit would be addressed at trial for which defendant and what aspects would be settled through summary judgment at this point in the case. Hibben found legal cause to grant summary judgment in Langford's claims of malicious prosecution and intrusion upon seclusion. I'd never heard that before except in this article, but found that a reasonable jury could rule in Langford's favor on claims of abuse of process and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Nepper, who filed the motion for summary judgment, will only face trial on the 2 remaining claims. Craven, however, did not join Nepper in filing for summary judgment, and therefore all claims raised against Craven will be presented by a jury. So the point of bringing this article up is that the case is still ongoing, and then it is the turkey vulture who is now engaging in this fantasy that men can become women. I mean, and it's, again, this is one of those things that we're told, well, that doesn't happen in Wyoming. Well, here I have a clear example of the Wyoming media perpetuating the lie that men can become women. I mean, you're at no point during your life were you a member of another gender or that you were a member of another species. Men can no more become women than they can become a trout. And yet you have the Wyoming media, namely the turkey vulture, claiming that that's actually a thing. Langford's fourth and final claim is that Nepper and Craven's actions caused her intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, a plaintiff must prove that the defendant's conduct was extreme and outrageous, going, quote, beyond all possible bounds of decency. They must also prove that the defendant intentionally or recklessly caused the plaintiff to suffer severe emotional harm to recover the claim in Wyoming. Langford alleged that the defendants participated, quote, in a targeted and sophisticated legal and public relations arrangement that publicized graphic, personal, and stigmatizing information on Langford's body and private life. Now, get in the Wayback Machine, it was Dallin James Langford, also known as Artemis Langford, who himself wrote articles to the university newspaper. It was he it was he that put himself out into the public sphere. I mean, that's how this whole thing got started. And so, two things here. It's the case, I think, the countersuit is, I think it's ridiculous. But second, it was Artemis Langford, or Dallin James Langford, also known as Artemis, that put himself into the public sphere. And then the secondary point here is that you have the Wyoming media somehow claiming that men can become women. In a bit of international news, Spain has closed their airspace to U.S. planes involved in the Iran war. And this is from the Jerusalem Post, I think. Spain has closed its airspace to U.S. planes involved in attacks on Iran, a step beyond its previous denial of use of jointly operated military bases. Defense Minister Margarita Robles said on Monday, or Roble, whatever, she's Spanish, so. Quote, "We don't authorize either the use of military bases or the use of airspace for actions related to the war in Iran," she told reporters in Madrid. The closure of the airspace forces military planes to bypass NATO member Spain en route to their targets in the Middle East, but it doesn't include emergency situations. El País, that's the newspaper, added, quote, the decision is part of a, okay, listen to this sentence. "The decision is part of the decision already made by the Spanish government not to participate or contribute to a war which was initiated unilaterally and against international law," so says the country of Spain. Let's see here. Excuse me, it was the Times of Israel, not the Jerusalem Post, that did this article. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has been one of the most vocal opponents of the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran, describing them as reckless and illegal. Seems to me that what is reckless and definitely illegal is allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I mean, that is definitely in the reckless category. Here's another one. This one is bananas. No pun intended. CBS News. 3 arrested in the UK after nearly $100 million worth of cocaine was found hidden in bananas. 3 people have been charged in the United Kingdom after they allegedly attempted to traffic nearly $100 million worth of cocaine in a container of bananas, authorities said, marking the latest instance of the illicit drug being concealed in a shipment of tropical fruit. Joshua Berry, 28, and Daniel Dumitru, 37, and Andrew Smythe, 46, were all arrested in Southampton, England, where they are next scheduled to appear in court on April 17th. Berry was one of the last 3 to face charges in the case, and their arrests are part of the crime agency's investigation into an enormous cocaine haul that was seized at Southampton docks earlier this month. Officers with the border agency discovered more than 2,000 pounds, 1 ton of cocaine inside a shipping container filled with bananas that arrived at the Southampton port from Panama, although authorities said it originally set sail from Nicaragua. The results carried a street value equal to about 75 million pounds, or roughly $98.9 million, all hidden in bananas. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, Ken.
I wonder if that throws off the dogs.
In the bananas?
They used to send drugs in coffee because the coffee grounds would interfere with the dogs.
I don't know. I mean, it's bananas. I mean, they do have a scent to them, but I don't know. Let's see here. Let's try the Fox News again. It says Samuel Alito speaking.
Not subject to any foreign power is pretty straightforward. So let me give you these examples. A boy is born here to an Iranian father who has entered the country illegally. That boy is automatically an Iranian national at birth, and he has a duty to provide military service to the Iranian government. Is he not subject to any foreign power?
Not within the meaning of the 1866 Act, Justice Alito. And that's clear from Wong Kim Ark, and it's clear from the debates. What the framers meant by the phrase "not subject to any foreign power" was referring to the ambassador exception. If it meant what the government contends, basically not a subject of any foreign power, that another country considers you a jus sanguinis citizen, then lawful permanent residence, all foreign nationals.
Ordinary public meaning of that would certainly encompass that boy, would it not?
Justice Alito, if you think that the language of the 1866 Act was ambiguous, as Wong Kim Ark says, the shift to the language of the 14th Amendment, which is the operative text, certainly clears up any ambiguity.
Well, what I said about a boy born to an Iranian father is true of children born here to parents who are nationals of other countries. If I'm correct, it's true to a child who's born here to Russian parents. It's true to a child who's born here to Mexican parents. They're automatically citizens or nationals of those countries and have a duty of military service. It sure seems like that makes them subject to a foreign power.
But again, Justice Alito, that would have meant that the children of Irish, Italian, and other immigrants, which Wong Kim Ark refers to and the framers refer to, would not have been citizens either. Because if the only test is whether that US-born child is considered a citizen by another country under their jus sanguinis laws, then no foreign nationals' children would be.
Well, in all of those
That's
cases,
the point.
parents could be naturalized, and then the children would be derivatively naturalized when the parents were naturalized. Wong Kim Ark, I'm sorry, the red light is on. Wong Kim Ark has a passage explaining how this court should treat dicta. And it quotes something that John Marshall said. It is well, this is quoting from Wong Kim Ark, it is well to bear in mind the oft-quoted words of Chief Justice Marshall, it is a maxim not to be disregarded, that general expressions in every opinion are to be taken in connection with the case in which those expressions are used. If they go beyond the case, they may be respected, but ought not to control the judgment in a subsequent suit when the very point is presented for a decision. So does that fall within the, what's good for the goose is good for the gander rule? That's how Wong Kim Ark treats what was said in the slaughterhouse cases. Should we apply that same rule to Wong Kim Ark itself?
Wong Kim Ark tells you what to make of the slaughterhouse dicta. It was dicta. The issue of citizenship was not at play in slaughterhouse. And in contrast, the parts of the holding, the parts of the decision that I alluded to are the controlling rule of decision.
That's good enough. I mean, this is interesting to me in that it shows you how much the Supreme Court relies on previous precedent. So they're talking about a case from the 1800s. You just quoted John Marshall, and I think it gives you a pretty clear view into how the Supreme Court operates, that they do operate on precedent. And Samuel Alito was giving a couple different examples of where the ACLU's, and that was the attorney that you heard, the Wang was her last name, but the attorney for the ACLU was arguing that birthright citizenship is a thing. And Alito's questioning was, well, look, it didn't apply here and it didn't apply here, so why should it apply to everybody?
I think one of the disappointing things about the profession of attorney is that...
Just one of them.
Yeah. Is that it feels like they dedicate a substantial amount of their energy to figuring out how to get around the law.
Yes.
And we saw that in the recent Supreme Court case about abortion here in the state. They knew the plain meaning of being able to make your own health care decisions.
Yes.
And then expanded it because they could, not because it was right or because they didn't understand what the legislature meant. And that's one of those reasons that I really like leaving the findings, when there are them, into a draft law, into a bill, is it helps clear some of that up later. I don't know that it makes any difference, though.
Well, what do you mean by findings? Just explain that for our
audience. It's a little bit like the language of a resolution, where the legislature might say, whereas this, then this. And it explains the logic. Why did we make this law? Why did we change the statute? Why did we write it this way? it adds a little bit of color to that. But the judiciary doesn't like that.
Well,
They
because
like
it
you to
kinda-
just write it so that they then can find their little sideways ways around things. And does it really mean is? It depends on what the definition of is.
Exactly right. Well, and you bring up a good point. It kind of brings us full circle on today's episode. But in the Supreme Court decision on abortion, they conveniently forgot about subsection C of Article 1, Section 38, which says that the legislature can set up restrictions on your right to healthcare access. And so thinking being that, well, if the legislature says that, abortion is not health care, well, then that's a restriction under subsection C. But they completely ignored that part of it.
And once they've done that, then this idea of precedence takes place. And that particular case gets cited over and over, and we rely more and more on that and less on the law itself. And say, well, yeah, the law says this, but we got around it here this way. We get around it here.
Well,
this
that's what
way.
they attempted to do with the most recent challenge. They said, well, you've already decided on abortion here, so let's just roll this into the other case. And fortunately, that retired judge had a different way of thinking on it. One more thing that I don't want to miss on this whole Supreme Court business is when you take your oath of citizenship, when somebody goes through the naturalization process, and that's one of my favorite times to be at the legislature, by the way, is when newly minted citizens take their oath. And I guess, well, you take your oath and then you become a newly minted citizen. But anyway, when they come into the legislative chamber, and just the size of the smiles you see are just pretty impressive. But when they take their oath, they renounce all allegiance to any other government. Now, what we played for you from the Supreme Court arguments this morning, and this was Samuel Alito's point, that if you're an Iranian citizen and you have a child, that child is also an Iranian citizen and is also required to participate in the Iranian military. So how is it that that citizen can have foreign entanglements, to use George Washington's terminology? How is it that that child can have associations with another government, but when a newly minted citizen takes the oath of office, they renounce all citizenship? Now, square that circle for me. But it points out the contradiction in a lot of the immigration law that we have. And I think that when we were inadvertently playing Ketanji Brown Jackson, she said, well, you have to respect the rule. She didn't say you have to respect the law. It's the rule. And I think far too often we focus on rules and not laws. Well, that pretty much does it for today's installment of this April Fool's Day, April 1st installment of the broadcast. We'll be back tomorrow for a brand new edition of Cowboy State Politics. Have a good